You will not believe what happened when our overbearing HOA president decided to demolish my disabled sister's wheelchair ramp while she was away at her job. However, what this entitled neighbor failed to understand was that my sister was not just any resident. She was the governor of the state. This turned out to be the biggest blunder in Jessica's HOA career. But how did the whole neighborhood end up caught in a nationwide scandal? Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe if you want more stories about Jessica and the HOA. The bright yellow notice stuck to our front door made my blood boil. It was the 5th HOA violation notice this month, all about my sister Emily's wheelchair ramp. I crumpled it up and tossed it into my growing pile of Jessica Thompson's official warnings. Just then, I heard Emily's electric wheelchair rolling up the ramp behind me. "Another love note from our wonderful neighbor?" Emily asked with a weary smile, the dark circles beneath her eyes revealing just how drained she was from her new position. Yet she never complained, not about work, not about the car accident that left her wheelchair-bound 6 months ago, nor about Jessica's relentless harassment. You would think being HOA president would keep her busy enough, but apparently not busy enough to stop her from stalking our house. I said this as I watched from our kitchen window while Jessica stood in her driveway taking photos of our ramp with her phone. Her perfectly highlighted hair and designer workout clothes could not mask the look on her face. A look of pure resentment appeared on her face. I recall the day we put in the ramp. We had followed every single regulation, hired a certified contractor, obtained all the necessary permits from the city, and even chose the exact shade of gray paint that matched our house trim. But Jessica arrived before the concrete had even set, brandishing the HOA rule book as if it were some kind of powerful talisman. Section 8, paragraph 3 explicitly states that any external alterations require approval from the board, she said, her tone dripping with fake worry, explaining that we must preserve our property values. What truly irritated me was how Jessica kept scheduling HOA meetings about our ramp at times when Emily could not attend. Not that Emily would have been able to go anyway, because she was too busy governing the state. That's right. My sister is not just any homeowner, she is the governor. However, we had kept this fact discreet in the neighborhood to protect her privacy during recovery. Last week I saw Jessica measuring our ramp with a tape measure at 6 o'clock in the morning. When I confronted her, she insisted she was merely fulfilling her duties as HOA president. After that, I began to document everything by recording videos, saving all her notices, and keeping a thorough log of every exchange. Something inside me warned that we might need this evidence. This morning felt different, though. As I helped Emily into her car for her physical therapy session, I noticed Jessica huddled with 2 men in suits near her house, pointing directly at ours. Walking up the stairs and gesturing dramatically, one of them was jotting notes in a notebook while the other was snapping more photos. I said to Emily, "I do not like this. Perhaps it is time we show them who they are truly dealing with." Emily shook her head firmly. "I will not abuse my position to demand special favors. We will address this properly through the correct procedures." Yet, as I saw Jessica's victorious grin while handing thick manila envelopes to the men in suits, a persistent thought gnawed at me that following the rules might not suffice now. I took out my phone and began recording. Jessica's voice floated on the morning breeze reaching across our yards. "Yes, we will need that bulldozer here first thing tomorrow morning. The board has already authorized the removal." My heart sank. Could they really demolish a wheelchair ramp? As Emily's car disappeared around the corner, I hurried inside to examine our security footage and locate our permit folder. But what I uncovered in those files was life-changing, a revelation that would make Jessica regret ever hearing about us. I was having breakfast when the sound of heavy machinery grew louder outside our home. My spoon fell with a clatter into the bowl as I rushed to the window, my heart nearly stopping. There was Jessica, standing right in our front yard, wearing her iconic red blazer and flawlessly styled blonde hair, pointing at our wheelchair ramp, while a man in a construction hat nodded eagerly. I grabbed my phone to record everything as I ran. Outside, the early morning sun was just beginning to rise, and most of our neighbors were still fast asleep. In our driveway, a bright yellow bulldozer sat, its metal blade shining in a way that felt threatening. Two men wearing orange vests were measuring the ramp with bright yellow tape measures, while Jessica clutched a stack of papers against her chest as if they were priceless. "What do you think you're doing?" I called out, my voice trembling more than I wanted. Jessica's face lit up with that insincere smile she always wore at HOA meetings. "Oh, good, you're home," she said brightly, walking toward me in her designer heels that pressed slightly into our fresh grass. "I have here an emergency order from the HOA board. This structure violates community guidelines, Section 4.23. She waved a paper in my face but pulled it away before I could grab it. I took a deep breath, just like Emily had taught me during her campaign speeches. "Jessica, we submitted all the necessary paperwork. We have approval from the city." She cut me off, her smile never fading. "The city isn't the HOA, dear. As president of the board, it's my responsibility to uphold our community standards. This ramp is an eyesore and is lowering property values. Just look at how it conflicts with the neighborhood's overall look." The bulldozer's engine roared, making my stomach churn. I quickly pulled up the property maps on my phone, which Emily had made me save, showing our property boundaries and permits. "This is illegal. You can't just tear down someone's property without—" Karen only laughed, a shrill sound that sent shivers down my spine. She ignored the proper notice or court order. I reminded her that the notice was sent 3 weeks ago through certified mail, and we had the receipt to prove it. She then pulled out another document bearing a signature I did not recognize. I quickly dialed Emily's number, but it went straight to voicemail since she was locked in that closed-door budget meeting all day. I tried reaching her assistant, security, anyone I could think of, but no one answered. Meanwhile, the construction crew began placing bright orange cones around our driveway. One worker seemed hesitant, double-checking his paperwork several times. I noticed him quietly speaking to a co-worker and pointing at something odd. I warned firmly, "If you proceed, you will be hearing from our lawyers. This act breaks the Americans with Disabilities Act." I started live-streaming the entire situation, capturing every moment on my phone. For the first time, Jessica's smile wavered slightly. I shouted that no homeowners association is exempt from federal law, loud enough to wake neighbors. Lights began flickering on in nearby houses. Our elderly neighbor, Mr. Rodriguez, peeked outside briefly before retreating when he saw Jessica. But she had already turned to the bulldozer operator, giving him a swift nod. The machine growled to life, its treads crushing against our driveway as the blade descended toward the ramp we had spent weeks carefully installing. "Last chance, Jessica," I said firmly, holding my phone steady in my hands. "You are making a tremendous error." She turned to face me, her eyes chilly despite the smile on her lips. The real mistake was allowing this abomination to be constructed in the first place. Sometimes people must realize that rules exist for a purpose. The bulldozer's blade caught the edge of the ramp with an awful screech of metal against concrete. I was still filming as pieces of our carefully built ramp started to collapse. What they failed to realize was that Mr. Rodriguez had come back with his own camera, and more neighbors had gathered, phones raised to record. Just then, my phone vibrated with a message from Emily's head of security. "Stay calm, keep filming, help is 3 minutes away." I smiled for the very first time that morning, watching Jessica orchestrate the destruction of our ramp like a maestro leading an orchestra. She was so fixated on her triumph that she failed to notice the black SUVs turning onto our street or the growing sound of sirens in the distance. Sometimes the gravest mistakes arise from the smallest gaps in knowledge, like not knowing your apparently ordinary neighbor is actually one of the most influential people in the state. Jessica was about to learn this lesson the hardest way. I will never forget the moment when our peaceful suburban street morphed into a scene straight out of a film. Just as Jessica was busy high-fiving her Choi comrades over their victory in dismantling the eyesore, the first black SUV made the turn. Turning corner after corner, red and blue lights burst into view, flashing all around. My hands trembled as I hit the record button on my phone. This was about to be something unforgettable. Jessica's expression shifted from smug confidence to confusion as 3 state police cruisers arrived, followed by 5 identical black government vehicles. Neighbors who had been watching secretly through their curtains all day now poured onto their front lawns. Everyone sensed that something major was unfolding. "What is all this?" Jessica demanded, her voice trembling slightly. "This is a private neighborhood matter." At that moment, Emily's head of security stepped outside, surveying the scene before opening the rear door of the center SUV. The street instantly fell silent as my sister appeared in her wheelchair, clad in her official governor's blazer and wearing the serious look I had only seen during critical press briefings. "Actually, Mrs. Thompson," Emily's voice rang out clear and commanding, "this became a state issue the moment you broke federal disability protection laws." She rolled forward, her security squad taking precise positions around her. "Not to mention damage to state property without permission." Jessica's face went through a whirlwind of emotions in just a few seconds. "State property," she squeaked. Emily continued, pulling out her phone. "Would you prefer to see the deed, or should we start discussing the Americans with Disabilities Act? I am especially knowledgeable about Title II since I have just—" New state protections were signed into law last month. The gathering of neighbors grew larger as I noticed at least a dozen phones capturing every moment. Mrs. Jenkins from across the street was already broadcasting live on Facebook. However, the HOA rules explicitly stated the regulations. Jessica stumbled backward while clutching her cherished violation notices. "Interesting you should bring those up," Emily interrupted, signaling her assistant to step forward with a large binder. "My legal team has spent the entire afternoon reviewing your HOA's rules. Would you like to hear what we discovered?" I saw Jessica's HOA board members quietly retreating behind her. Smart move. Numerous breaches of state housing laws, discriminatory behavior. Emily paused to let it sink in. Irregular financial records extending 3 years back. The crowd gasped. I zoomed in on Jessica's face with my phone as it turned paler than the violation notices she adored so much. "This cannot be," Jessica stammered. "I did not know. You are the governor," Emily finished for her. "Nor did I realize that removing a disabled person's access ramp without proper notice or permits is a federal crime." 2 state investigators stepped forward, notebooks in hand. Behind them, I noticed news vans arriving at the end of the street. One investigator said, "We will need you to come with us to answer questions about today's events and these financial irregularities." As Jessica was escorted away, still whispering about property values and HOA regulations, Emily turned to address the crowd. Among the assembled crowd, she looked every inch the leader she truly was, even as she sat in her wheelchair amidst the wreckage of our ramp. My fellow neighbors and I listened as she began, "Today provides us with a chance to explore what community truly signifies." She pointed to the demolished ramp and said, "This is not only about my access to my home, it concerns every individual's right to live with respect and dignity in their own neighborhood." The expressions on the faces around reflected shame, anger, and most importantly, empathy. However, as I observed Jessica being led to a police car while still holding on to her HOA rule book, I couldn't help but question the future of our calm neighborhood following this intense evening. More crucially, I wondered how many other HOAs were subjected to the same manipulations Jessica had successfully executed for years. The morning after the destruction, my phone buzzed nonstop. Our security camera footage had spread like wildfire overnight, and news vans were already stationed outside our house. But what shocked me most was a call from my old high school friend, now a civil rights attorney, with startling information about Jessica's previous HOA violations. I could hardly believe what I saw when I opened the files he sent. Jessica had faced lawsuits 3 times before for comparable actions in other communities. Yet she had always quietly settled and moved on to intimidate a new HOA. This time, however, she had targeted the wrong home on the wrong day. Emily, being the extraordinary governor she is, didn't just stand by. Upset by how quickly she got organized, Emily called an urgent press conference right on our front lawn with the broken ramp parts still scattered behind her. The reporters went crazy when she revealed a pile of documents proving how Jessica had not only violated federal disability laws, but also breached 17 different state housing rules. But here is where it gets truly fascinating. Our elderly neighbors gradually started speaking up. Mrs. Chen, from across the street, shared how Jessica forced her to remove her medical garden. Mr. Rodriguez presented paperwork showing how she fined him for installing a wheelchair lift for his veteran father. Even the usually quiet Baker family stepped forward describing threats of fines over their autistic son's sensory-friendly playground equipment. The neighborhood I had known for years suddenly changed. People were communicating openly, sharing their experiences, and uniting. Jessica attempted to call an emergency homeowners association meeting to confront these baseless claims, but nobody attended except her 2 loyal board supporters. Meanwhile, Emily had invited disability rights advocates to our home, and half the neighborhood gathered to learn about accessible housing laws. Just when we thought tensions could not rise any further, someone leaked Jessica's homeowners association financial records, revealing she used the fines she imposed to fund renovations on her own house, falsely claiming they had board approval from the community. The HOA's lawyer quit immediately due to the ongoing issues, and 3 board members stepped down after sending furious emails that somehow reached the local news. Despite this, Jessica refused to give in. The following morning, she arrived at our home carrying a cease and desist letter, insisting we stop spreading false information about her. What she did not anticipate was walking straight into a meeting between Emily and the State Housing Commissioner, who showed great interest in examining every HOA decision Jessica had made over the past 5 years. The expression on Jessica's face when she realized her reign over the HOA was collapsing was almost worth all the turmoil, almost. Yet, the most rewarding sight was seeing our neighbors place signs supporting accessible housing in their yards one by one until Jessica's house stood out, completely sign-free. News helicopters hovering above captured the entire scene, and by sunset our story was featured on national news. As I watched more neighbors gather on our lawn that evening, exchanging stories and discussing plans for a more inclusive HOA, I couldn't help but wonder how a single wheelchair ramp had sparked such a profound transformation. But the night was far from over. Emily had just received intriguing documents linking the bulldozing company to Jessica's private contracting business. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages from neighbors sharing their own nightmare experiences with the HOA. My phone kept ringing with reporters eager to cover what had happened. What truly captured our attention was captured by an email from Mrs. Rodriguez, our elderly neighbor, who Jessica had fined last month for having a garden gnome. She also had evidence of Jessica breaking other rules. I printed every one of the HOA regulations and spent the entire day marking the sections Jessica had ignored. Emily's legal team discovered that Jessica never actually submitted the correct paperwork to become HOA president. She simply took over when the previous president relocated, and no one dared to challenge her. The deeper we investigated, the more misconduct we uncovered. Then something incredible happened. Our story caught the attention of Tommy Chin, a well-known YouTube lawyer who creates videos exposing unfair housing policies. He flew in to meet with Emily and offered to help us sue Jessica and the HOA at no cost. His video about our case went viral, reaching millions of views in just 24 hours. Jessica tried to save herself by calling an urgent HOA meeting, but this time was unlike before. Instead of the usual sparse attendance with just 2 sleepy neighbors, the community center was filled. People who had never spoken up before shared accounts of Jessica's bullying. Mr. Jenkins displayed pictures of his daughter's treehouse, which Jessica had forced him to dismantle. The Wilson family recounted how their Christmas lights were declared too bright. Emily took the microphone and did more than just address the ramp issue. She unveiled her major plan, a new law designed to shield homeowners from HOA abuse. The room erupted in applause as she announced it would be named the Right to Home Happiness Act. Yet the most exciting part was still to come. Our security camera footage revealed that Jessica had falsified documents to claim she received approval to remove the ramp. This dishonesty caused her own attorney to withdraw support just 2 days later. We then watched Jessica take down her cherished row of bushes, the very ones she had made everyone else replicate and relocate. The new HOA board has been incredible. They transformed the old violations office into a community support center. Instead of issuing fines, they now welcome new residents with gift baskets. They also launched a program to assist elderly neighbors with home repairs. Emily's ramp was rebuilt, but even better than before. Local artists decorated it with stunning floral designs and installed soft glowing lights for nighttime. Kids in the area actually believe it is the most beautiful spot on our street. Last week, Emily organized a barbecue for the entire neighborhood in our backyard. Seeing everyone laugh and share meals where Jessica had once shouted about grass height rules made me realize something important. Sometimes the toughest experiences bring about the greatest improvements. Remember that construction company? They now provide free ramp installations to disabled residents across the state, and their CEO issued a personal apology to Emily. They also created a scholarship fund for students studying disability rights law. The most unexpected news came yesterday when I was promoted to lead the state's new homeowner protection office. My first task is to teach other communities how to transform their HOAs from bullies into supporters. Emily says we are only beginning, and you know what? Seeing how much has shifted in merely 12 months, I believe her. Our experience even ended up in school textbooks as an example of challenging unfair regulations. However, the true triumph is not in the headlines or the freshly passed legislation. It lies in small moments, like watching Mrs. Rodriguez's garden gnome collection grow larger every week, or seeing children playing freely on their front lawns without the fear of receiving violation notices. Jessica's former house was sold just last week. The new family has 3 children and 2 dogs, and guess what is in their front yard? A wheelchair ramp for their grandmother. No one objected. In fact, 5 neighbors came together to help with the move. That was when I realized we had not only transformed an HOA, but also changed my own community.